So everybody, this is Frank. Frank's fashionably late to our meeting, but it's all good. He's the owner and president of Panda Consulting, and he's here to talk to us about what's new in ArcGIS Pro 2.6 editing. Take it away, Frank.
Oh, okay. So I'm so sorry. This is, we're going to get there. We are going to get there. I think we are fine
seeing your
here.
desktop.
I don't want to see the full desktop. I don't want to share that out. I want to share something different. I only want to share an app. All right. There it is. Got it. Okay. That should be fine, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And sorry, I'm almost there. I'm almost there. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. All right. I am so sorry. All right. So what we're going to do is talk about editing in ArcGIS Pro. Interestingly, I just gave this presentation about 2 hours ago. So it's going to be a little weird, but all right. On here, one of the things we decided to do was because we only have, remind me again, I am so sorry, Kim. Remind me again, how long do I have?
Well, our normal schedule would be until 3:30. The next meeting is scheduled to start. We did start a little late. Is that still okay for you?
Sure, that's fine. I mean, I'm fine. I just don't want to go in and bump into somebody else's presentation.
Yep, we have a meeting planned for 3:30. Go ahead,
if
Lori.
you can wrap it up in like a half hour, Frank, that would be good.
All right, watch how quickly I can go through slides. Because I want, there's some slides on the end here that we really want to get into. All right. So this is the core of this presentation, and it talks about the changes that have been made in 2.6, some of which you can immediately see. For example, I see Margot here, and with Margot, we've already set some of these changes in place, but there's a couple ones which are key. Some for just plain old ArcGIS Pro editing, and some for the Parcel Fabric. All right, so let's start with just ArcGIS Pro editing. And it turns out that inside of here, that within ArcGIS Pro, there's a new option as it relates to editing. All right, and this new option goes, if we go down to the sessions setting, it says enable and disable from the edit tab. Now, those of you that are coming from ArcGIS Map into ArcGIS Pro, we kind of miss the start editing and stop editing. Well, what this actually does is this goes and puts it in place again. And when we click on this and then go back over to our edit tab, in fact, we now have a button here. And that button basically means start editing or stop editing. So if you look right now, I have a button and it's not depressed. There's no indication here that it's actually on it. If I look at my edit tools, they're all disabled on here. So when I click on here, and you can see there's now an indicator here that this is now, the editing is enabled and suddenly all my tools become available. For those of us that are used to Pro, that was sort of, well, I really didn't want to go back. So there was a problem with that. And so you can turn it off so that you don't see this edit tool anymore. But for those of us that are just making the transition and miss that start editing and stop editing, it's there. But there's also something else for people who are just getting in here that I want to show you. because let me go back and disable that now so that that button doesn't show up anymore. But there is a setting here under General and Project Recovery. So what ArcGIS Pro 2.6 is actually doing is as you're going and moving through, by default, it's creating a backup of your project file. Every 5 minutes is the default setting on here. I've changed it to 15 on mine. But it creates a backup file so that if ArcGIS Pro crashes, and if you talk to the dev team, it says, oh, it's never supposed to crash. But if it crashes, it actually takes the latest configuration that you have and allows you to recover that on here. So it in essence does a save, but it doesn't overwrite your existing project file. Interestingly, that sort of gets into unintended consequences, because if you tell it to go and automatically create a backup of your project file, and under editing, you have it set up so that, let me get in here, under your editing, the session, that the edits are saved every time your project file is saved. That means that every time it creates a backup of your project file, it saves your edits. And that's unseen consequence when, because you might be editing and in the background, it saves your a backup file for your project, and suddenly you can no longer undo your saves. So you want to make sure that if you're going to let it create backups of your project, you uncheck this button. Make sure that it understands that you will tell it when to save your projects. And again, Margot, we've set this up for you so you don't have to worry about it. You can sit back and not do anything with it, all right? So that's one of the first things, and one of those things in the background that you really don't see, but you want to make sure that you're aware of it. And then there's other things. For example, there's a thing called enforce attribute validation. And again, this is, let me get rid of this one here. This is another setting under the project's options, under editing, in which when you say enforce attribute validation, if you have a required field, or if you have a coded value domain where it says, you know, the values that are supposed to be in here are these values, and somehow data gets introduced that doesn't match those values, it starts giving you error messages saying that doesn't match the validation that's on here. Usually we recommend that you turn this thing off if you're migrating data over and you've not validated or verified that data beforehand. This, while it seems like a good idea, it also becomes problematic. And we've seen it on several of our clients' data where they had coded value domains that aren't set right, or subtypes that aren't set right. It will cause them to go and cause problems for it. All right, so that's the second thing that you want to watch out for on 2.6. The next one, and this is an editing tool, and this is for when you are creating, individual, these are called polylines, all right? And if I go into edit vertices, what this allows me to do is select a line, and then as I'm editing here, I can right click on a vertex, and it allows me to do trim before and trim after. So the first question is always, well, what is before and what is after? Well, it turns out that if you look at the symbology of the vertices, the starting vertex is green and the ending vertex of a line is red. You can see that on every single line. It starts on green and ends on red. So that I can go in here and say, okay, on here, I can trim from this point forward. So if I do trim back, it's going to trim all of these. If I say trim forward, It's going to trim from here forward and allow me to go and do that trim there and basically remove those extra vertices on there. The question I usually get is, well, if that's the case, does it work on a polygon? If I do edit features on a polygon, and if I go in here and say, do I have trim before and trim after? Yes. So where is the endpoint on here? I'm not even going to look. It does allow you to go and trim from there to everything up to that point. Or if I go and do backwards here, I can say trim everything after this, and it goes and edits everything after that. So it's a really quick way to go and make trims on multiple vertex boundaries, whether it be polylines or whether it be polygons on there. It allows you to go and make those trims on it. You're not going to use it a whole lot, but there is something that you can use this fairly often, especially if you're doing simple editing. Snap to contact or snap to feature. So if I'm in here and I'm creating a polygon in here, I can click here to sort of start my polygon. And when I click here, I can go right click and go to snap to feature, and it gives me the option that maybe I didn't quite get it where I want it to go. And I can say, go ahead and snap it to the closest vertex. And then it will snap to the closest vertex for me. And I could say right here, snap to the next closest vertex on here. So it allows me to go and change, including I can go in here and say, snap to feature to the midpoint of that closest feature that's in there. Very interesting tool. Again, it's one of these things that's in your tool belt for actually going and editing through here. It's a nice addition. Most of these additions are fairly simple additions, fairly nice additions. One of the changes to the—
Can I ask you a question before you go any
Yes.
further?
Oh, please, yes.
Mike Kutnick put a question in the chat.
Thank
He
you.
said, is there, on the start and polyline colors settable for the red and green colorblind users? Can you change those from red and green?
Oh, on the vertex. Interesting, you should say that. Because there actually is now inside of 2.6. I
feel like that might have been a planted question though.
Thank you. I think it was. I think it was a planted question. So if we go to the options again, down to editing, to symbology, it allows you to go and start and reset those with appearances on here. So you can reset them to different colors. That's a great question on there. And thank you for that. And this list that I'm showing you, this is an abbreviated list, but there's all sorts of things introduced inside of here to make it easier and make it something that's more useful to us, because they're beginning to understand, Esri's beginning to understand that, in fact, not everybody, because of red-green colorblind, they're finally recognizing that they should be going in and showing us and allowing us to go make that modification in there. All right, so let's go from there to changes in the reshape tool. So if I have a polyline that I do have here, let me go and select this. This is a polyline. And if I go to my reshape tool, all right, my reshape tool, traditionally, if I go and try to go and reshape this thing, it will give me an error message saying, you have to cross any feature that you're attempting to reshape at least twice. It has to have an intersection in there. Well, if you look here on the pane, there actually is a new option that says, I can reshape it and only have one intersection on here. So what it actually is going to do, it's going to reshape, and it's going to take the side with the least amount of vertices on it, the smaller side, and reshape it into this new shape here for you. All right. So you can go in here and do a reshape on here, only doing one intersection. All right. Because of having this option set. Now I can tell you that this option only works if you have the allow reshaping without a selection unselected. So as soon as you do this, that option goes away. But if you have where you have to select the parcel, you have to select the feature, and then you can do the reshape with just a single intersection. All right. Copy parallel lines. One of the things I really like about this is now, and I have here, let me make sure I go and turn this on. Go in here, this has here, and me make sure so that I can see the COGO values on here. When I go in here now, and if I have lines that have COGO on them, I can actually do a copy parallel on them. And let's go and make them lines here. And I want to copy these, and I want to copy them to separate lines. Each one of these should be a separate line. And I want to copy it, let's say 1,000 feet to the right side of this line. So it's only going to copy it on this side, 1,000 feet. And it always did that. You know, the last couple versions allowed you to do this. But the difference now is that if it sees that you have values in the COGO lines, when I say copy it, it will automatically calculate the values of those copied lines. All right. So you don't have to go in there then and tell it what those are. So if you think about it, if you're designing, for example, a road and you put the road center line in there and you have your COGO values there, and then you copy it on both sides of the road to create the road rights of way, it will automatically calculate the COGO values for those road rights of way. It will calculate the bearings and the distances and the curve components for them if you have curves inside of here. So that's a really nice tool, especially for parcel mappers, for people that are dealing with COGO values in there. This is a nice tool to go and make it a little bit easier, a little bit more efficient in what we're doing. All right, so let's talk about the divide tool. So the divide tool, let me go back here to edit and select. So the divide tool, and this is an interesting part, is that one of the things with ArcGIS Pro, and again, I'm not sure how many of the people in the audience are familiar with ArcGIS Pro and sort of design philosophy behind it, but the difference between ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro is that with ArcMap, you had to know, what am I editing? What tools do I have? And how do they work against those structures? With ArcGIS Pro, instead, the design philosophy was the user shouldn't be worried about what the structure is. They should only be concerned about, what do I want to do with this thing? You know, if I have a line, maybe I want to divide the line. If I want to have a polygon, maybe I want to divide the polygon. And I don't want to worry about whether or not that comes from a shape file, or whether it comes from a CAD file, or whether it comes from a feature class in a file geodatabase, or SDE, or a feature service. And I don't want to worry about any of it. Don't make the user go and look at that. Instead, just you have something selected and you want to divide it. Well, now, for example, I'm going to have a line selected, and I want to go ahead and divide that line. So I click on divide, and with a divide tool now, whatever you've selected, it changes to reflect what that feature is and what that structure is. So if I change this from a line, by the way, the line will allow me to divide this, into a polygon, the options change. So now suddenly I have the ability to go and divide the polygon certain ways. All right, so I can say, well, I want to divide this and I want to go in and divide it into equal widths. And I want that width to be 500 feet, and then tell it that I want to choose on this side here, and it will let me go and divide that. If I go back to a line, it will allow me to divide a line by a single distance, by multiple copies of that distance. So let's say, let's just divide this by 200 feet. All right, we do that, so it'll give us a preview of that. If we do multiples, we can do 200 feet 5 times, and it will show us what it looks like. We can change the start or the end, and it will show you where it is on here. Or we can say, no, make variations on it. Maybe the first one is 200 feet, and the second one is 500 feet, 200 feet, the second one is 500 feet, and so forth. So this is all good. That's already been in there. All those variations are in there. The change this time is that suddenly you can go and not just divide one thing, but you can divide multiple things. So if I have multiple lines in here, I can suddenly say, I want to divide all of these lines. I want to divide them in half, and it will divide each of those in half. I wanted to take 3 lines. I want to divide all the lines that I have selected and divide them in half. Or I want to divide them by percentages. And it's the same sort of thing. What's the percentage that you want to divide that in? So again, this will allow you to go and divide things, divide lines, at least multiple selected lines in there. Unfortunately, with this release, you still can't do distances when you have multiple lines selected, but this does allow you to go and select lines and say, every line that I have, just divide it in half, and boom, you can divide them all in half. All right, any questions on that? Nope. All right, splitting lines into Kogo. And this one's actually very nice because often you'll wind up getting lines, especially if you do things like copy CAD lines into your feature classes or feature services. That's one single line. If I look at it, that's just one line on there. So if I wanted to go and separate them into individual lines, there is a tool called Split into Kogo lines. And what that will do is it will go and split them all up into Kogo lines. And I'm going to tell it to override what the existing Kogo values are on here. And it will split them up and recalculate all of those lines for me, including curves and everything else. It will recalculate what those Kogo values are on there for me. All right. Margot's writing it that one down. That's a good one, Margot. All right. Here's another good one. So let's go in here and draw a line here. Let's go to create a line. Let's go and do a line. We'll make this a multi-part line just so we can show what's going on here. All right, we have a line. And on the end of that line, we want to go and create a cul-de-sac. All right, there is now a cul-de-sac tool where we can go and tell it that, for example, and looking at this, we probably will need something like a street width of, let's say, 100 feet. And then our radius will be, let's say, 200 feet. And then our return might be 50 feet. So what this will do is this will create a line. In this case, I'm going to put it not on junk, but I'm going to put it onto our parcel lines. And it will create the individual. It will parallel these lines, parallel this last segment, line segment, parallel it. And so that this is 100 feet. The distance from here to here is 200 feet. And the radius for this curve is 50 feet. And again, we can change whether that starts at the start of the line or at the end of the line. So there's an interesting element on here. Well, let's say that with this one, let's go in here and mess this up a little bit. And here, let's go and insert a vertex here. And let's take this and move it over here so that in fact we have sort of an offset cul-de-sac. Well, look at what happens to this offset cul-de-sac. As we offset it, it goes and determines where the parallel lines are here and where they're going to intersect on here, and automatically adjusts the cul-de-sac that's being created to reflect what the geometry of that one single road center line is on there. Really nice tool. All right. You want to make sure you set the line template. You saw me almost not doing it that time. There is a knife. I'm not even going to demonstrate this. This is the measure offsets tool, and it's under the measurement. It's not under an edit, but they put some nice things in here. Things such as you can measure an angle. You can measure perpendicular distances from points to a line that you draw. They've got some new measurement functions in here, which are really, really nice. If I want to go, for example, go here and go to measure, I can now go and measure an angle and show me the angle from here to here to here. It will let me measure the angle between them. It's a nice option that they had before. Simplify by straight lines and curves. For most normal editing, that's not a big deal. There used to be an add-in in ArcMaps that would allow you to go and take lines and get rid of densified curves on them. And they implemented that in ArcGIS Pro about 2.5, 2.4, but you can only do lines. Well, now the big change is that you can actually include polygons, and it will clean up densified curves inside of polygons. So if you get a CAD file or you know, forbid a shape file, which always has densified curves on it, you can take that, copy and paste it in, and then clean up those curves before you actually go and do anything else with it. That's this function here. All right. Is this too fast? Okay. All right. So now we're going to talk about some of the things inside the Parcel Fabric specific changes that are occurring. And the biggest one is what's called the parcel adjustments. All right. And so what I'm
Probably
going to do
have
is
about 1 minute left, Frank.
Oh, okay. This is going to be tough. All right. So parcel adjustments and least squares adjustments allows you to go and take and analyze the lines that were put in here, and allows you to go and analyze by here, tell it this, and it will go and run and validate it and tell you where you've got bad lines. So in here, it creates a new layer called an analyzed layer. And if I clear up my selection here, it has gone and identified that this line here doesn't match up with everything else, because I actually went in and changed it. It should have been 144 and it's now at 150. So it shows me where I've got lines that will cause problems. That could be bearing differences or line differences. It shows you that. The other difference is, let's see, there is a project a parcel fabric. You really won't be doing it. Usually your IT people will do that. And it's taking it from one projection system into another. It works correctly now. And there is shrink to seed. I'm done. I'm done. I am so embarrassed and so sorry. Interestingly, I knew it was on Tuesday, but I didn't register that today is Tuesday. I actually had it on my calendar for tomorrow. I am so sorry.
It's okay. We're glad that you were able to make it to talk with us today. There's some great content, and everybody was commenting on the, ooh, that's cool, and you know, the liking of the different tools you showed. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. But,
All
right.
Thank you, Frank. I would just like to say to everybody that has joined us today, thank you for attending the Land Records Day, the WLAA Fall Virtual Meeting. It has been a great day. We've heard lots of great content from Kyle and Stacy from the Register of Deeds, from Sherry, from title side of things and easements, and Frank today talking about ArcGIS Pro and the new editing tools. We'd hope to see you tomorrow for the Professional Development Day. It should be great. There's lots of great content, something different than maybe you're normally exposed to. So I would recommend you join in. The scavenger hunt reminder that it's going on every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There'll be clues released on the Slack channel, and to keep checking in on that. It'll be around the beginning of the sessions every day, so around 1 o'clock. Those will be listed, and don't forget to fill out your daily survey. We really want to know what you guys think. Directly following the meeting today, there's going to be a Land Information Officer Network meeting from, well, it was 3:30 to 4:30, so we'll shoot for 3:35 for the beginning. I'm going to run a few slides for a second. And then don't forget, later on tonight is the virtual paint night social. It's a separate link that you need to register for. There's an additional cost to that because it is an outside vendor. If you wanted to participate, you could. There's still time to get the link. You would not be able to get the supplies from them at this point, but you could join in and watch the creative funness that may ensue. That being said,
May I have one more comment?
oh, sure.
One more thing, sorry. If you like that presentation and you want something a little bit slower paced, all right. Sorry about that. If you go out to our Panda Consulting website, there is a link over on the top called workshops, all right? And if you pull it down, we actually offer 3 workshops per month. The first Thursday of the month is ArcGIS Pro. And how do you edit in Pro? How do you go and do that? So it's a 90-minute workshop that's free. All you have to do is sign up for it, and we will send you the links so you can get onto it. You actually can get copy to all the recording archives that we have. We've actually been doing this since COVID hit. So we now have 6 or 7 meetings at least to go through. The third Thursday of every month is in fact the ArcGIS Parcel Fabric Forum. All right, it's a really nice forum if you are in the Parcel Fabric. The fourth and final Thursday of the month is what we call the deep dive, and we cover all sorts of different topics, everything from story maps to vector tiles to arcade, all of that. This month, we have Dr. Nancy von Meyer and I. Nancy and I have been friends for over 35 years. We're going to sit down and have a long conversation about parcels, past, present, future. So if you want to come in and throw questions at us and such, please do that. Sorry to interrupt again. I apologize again. But please, these are free workshops. And when you sign up, we don't use it for marketing or anything. You'll never hear from us again. The only reason we do that is in the beginning, we opened it up and actually put the links on our webpage, and we started getting Zoom bombed. So we have to at least have some security there, but it's absolutely free. Go ahead and do that if you enjoyed what you want. And I promise I am slower than during those 90 minutes.
Hey, Frank.
Yes.
Hey, Frank, can we count on you for the annual too?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I would love to be there, but I suspect we're not going to do that. You're going to do virtual. And I promise you, I will put it on my calendar correctly. I am so.
We're all learning. This is all new.
Oh my gosh. Well, again, it was interesting because I was up in Washington State when Jason sent me an email and said, "Hey, Frank, they're waiting for you in WLIA." I'm like, oh my gosh, because I just did the same thing up in Washington State. So sorry about that. So Kelly, I see Kelly is here. Kelly has actually been coming to the workshops, I think, since we started. And I think she enjoys. I hope she gets something out of them.
Well, all right. I think at this point, we are going to jump into the Lion meeting. I am going to stop sharing this screen.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thank you, Frank.
All
Thank you,
right.
Frank.
All right.